Recasts in media can be a hit or miss when you're trying to go for a certain look for a movie or a television series. The studio, the network, and various players and institutions in between and beyond can influence actors getting swapped out and swapped in for any given character. When it comes to Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the franchise benefited from recasts that not only separated the 1997 supernatural drama television series from its 1992 horror comedy feature film origins, but also captured lightning in a bottle with recasts from its unaired pilot to the pilot we see on digital and DVD. Number 1. The one and only Buffy Summers. Except she isn't. Way before Sarah Michelle Gellar slayed as Buffy both literally and colloquially speaking for the WB television series, there was a whole nother person that embodied the role for a feature film that first gave us a taste of a world of vampire slayers. Kristy Swanson. Kudos to her for first making us sympathize with how heavy the weight of the world can be on the shoulders of a blonde teenage cheerleader, whose normal life goes off the rails after Kiefer Sutherland's dad shows up as a watcher and starts popping off about her destiny as a vampire slayer. Kristy's approach to the character was a lot more carefree, initially vacuous, and bubblier than Sarah Michelle Gellar's, though that's largely because the events of the movie sort of take place before Buffy is wiser, albeit traumatized and jaded by the events of the television series. I say sort of because the TV show can be considered a soft reboot or soft continuation of the movie, where some characters, storylines, and events are similar, but altered where necessary to suit the tone and style of the show. For example, the television series claims that Buffy moved to Sunnydale because she was expelled from her previous school after setting her gym on fire. In the events of the movie, however, the gym isn't set on fire, but is the location of the final battle against Lothos and his vampire minions. Tangent aside, Kristy's initial approach to the role of Buffy set the stage for what Buffy's character could be in a television series when the show was being retooled for the WB. And as we all know, Sarah Michelle not only understood the assignment, but made the character her own by building off of what came before her. And when it came time for a flashback in the television series to show events inspired by the movie, such as Buffy and Merrick meeting for the first time, SMG tapped into that campy Kristy Swanson energy and showed us the same adorable and way less jaded Buffy we loved from the movie. Number 2. Joyce Summers. While she's never directly addressed as Joyce Summers, Buffy's mom was originally played by Candy Clark in the 1992 film. With limited dialogue and a brief appearance in the movie, Candy Clark's interpretation of Buffy's mom is as a typical, superficial, conceited LA socialite of a mom who is oblivious to her daughter's struggles and cares more about material things. What's impressive about Candy Clark's performance is how effectively she was able to capture all of that when she was only in 2 scenes of the movie. And while Kristine Sutherland's interpretation also had moments of being oblivious to her daughter's struggles or just straight up being tone deaf.
Honey, are you sure you're a vampire slayer? I mean, have you tried not being a slayer? It's because you didn't have a strong father figure, isn't it?
She balanced it out by creating a nurturing enough environment for Buffy to be able to confide in her mom, even though it took a lot of dramatic shifts in the plot to get there. She also just was never this conceited or apathetic towards Buffy. This is understandable, especially given the television series format of the show, that characters would have more time to grow into and evolve their character journeys, whereas a movie format would restrict any such growth and nuance due to its 90-minute runtime. Number 3. Hank Summers. In a similar boat to Buffy's mom, James Paradise's portrayal of Buffy's dad doesn't exactly get too many lines. Actually, he only gets 2 lines, and there isn't much to know about him, aside from the fact that he shares the self-involved, superficial disposition that leads him to be oblivious to his teenage daughter's struggles bit with his wife, which honestly makes the couple perfect for each other. Oh, and he really cares about his Jag. Another thing he has in common with his wife. They're actually kind of cute together in a plastic, soulless, capitalistic kind of way, which makes it all the more surprising that by the time the TV show version of the character was first introduced, he had divorced Buffy's mother, who then moved to Sunnydale to raise her daughter as a single mother. Dean Butler's portrayal of the character was a lot colder than James Paradise's, but a necessary shift to show just how difficult life can be for a slayer who not only has to save the world on a regular basis, but also a teenage girl who can't maintain her relationship with her dad, considering he wants little to nothing to do with her and the family he once had. I think it's pretty safe to say that while the original casting of both parents was done for the sake of a campier story in the 1992 film, the television series definitely took a darker approach to the source material. Number 4. Merrick. The Giles before Giles was Giles, and no, it wasn't Anthony Stewart Head's character that was recast, but Donald Sutherland's Merrick, who first made an appearance in the 1992 film, who would later be played by Richard Reilly in the television series. While Donald Sutherland played a deadpan and composed Merrick, Richard Reilly went with a more panicked approach to the character. Donald Sutherland also brought a more paternal aura to his character, which helped us cheer both him and Buffy on during their fight against Lothos, and the growth he encourages in her, taking her from happy-go-lucky to a super responsible teenager who has to make tough choices for the greater good. This also makes it unfair to compare the impact and presence of Donald Sutherland's Merrick to Richard Reilly's, who had a guest role in 1 episode of the television series and barely a minute of screen time. Moving on. Number 5. Willow Rosenberg. This is probably the craziest recast as far as I'm concerned because it would quite literally throw off the trajectory of a lot of storylines in the show that had to do with supporting cast instead of Buffy herself. And yes, there's going to be a crap ton of spoilers, so if you haven't seen the show, now would be the time to stop watching this video, hit that subscribe button, go watch the show, and then come back and like this video. So you know how Willow has a crush on Xander, gets involved with Oz, reinsouls Angel, becomes a witch in training, breaks up with Oz, dates Tara, possibly not in that order, gets pretty powerful, goes evil, has a showdown with Jasmine, and then becomes a goddess? As far as I'm concerned, none of those storylines would have happened had it not been for Alyson Hannigan's performance as Willow Rosenberg. What's nuts is that there's another universe out there where Willow Rosenberg was played by a completely different actress, and apparently that universe is in 240p. Actress Riff Reagan, known for the 90s TV show Sisters, originally had been cast as Buffy's sidekick, but behind-the-scenes changes led to a recast that opted to have Alyson Hannigan assume the role moving forward. While Riff Reagan's portrayal in the unaired pilot was more of a stereotype of the cute bookworm trope, Alyson Hannigan went with a more nuanced approach that highlights the character's tenacity instead of overplaying her insecurities. Number 6. Principal Fluty. And here we have another unaired pilot recast, and one that I'm personally really sad about. Before Principal Fluty was played by Ken Lerner, and way before he was devoured by a group of teenage malcontents possessed by hyenas, actually now that I think about it, that is such a bizarre storyline, he was played by Stephen Tobolowsky, who some of you may know from Freaky Friday. Don't get me wrong, I thought Ken Lerner brought a sweet, goofy innocence akin to Ross from Friends to Robert Fluty's character in the television series, but at the cost of a really funny and endearingly incompetent version that Stephen Tobolowsky owned. Like, this man actually slayed harder than Buffy. Okay, maybe I'm gassing him up a bit too much, but he constantly misremembers Buffy's name, is not too worried about his campus being plagued by evil, and then says things like this.
We almost never have dead kids stuffed in a locker. I have a very strict policy.
Honestly speaking, this guy would have fit in really well on the show, and what it would become, and most likely would have lasted a lot longer than the cannibalized Fluty. Number 7. The Master. This one was a bit of a unique situation, I'm not gonna lie, because while Mark Metcalf did play the Master throughout the show, he was temporarily recast in Season 2's premiere episode by none other than David Boreanaz. This was likely due to scheduling conflicts, and considering the Master's appearance is heavy on prosthetics that David Boreanaz is already used to, it only made sense to have him as the Master, since he only had to appear for a few seconds here and there to keep the story moving along. I'm just glad they secured the original actor for episodes in the future where he has more of a verbose performance instead of the growls and hisses we see in the first episode of Season 2. Honestly, it's pretty frugal too. Number 8. Nikki Wood. Our final recast for the day, and the only one that's noticeable and permanent that didn't have anything to do with the 1992 film or the unaired pilot. Nikki Wood, a kick-butt slayer from the 70s with a killer fashion sense, was first seen in a flashback in episode 7 of season 5 named Fool for Love, in which she was played by stuntwoman April Whedon. After she dies at the hands of Spike, the First assumes her form in 2003 when it presents itself to her son Principal Wood in the 14th episode of season 7, First Date. The only difference here is that she's played by Katie Aubert, who looks very different from the Nikki Wood we've come to know from her initial non-speaking role. The reasoning behind this, according to the original actress, was that while she re-auditioned for the role when season 7 was in production, casting decided to go with someone who they considered to not appear as mature as April Whedon did, and so Katie Aubert took over the role for 2 episodes in season 7. Before we wrap up, there are 2 honorable mentions we have in store. Number 1, Other Buffys. Before Sarah Michelle Gellar was finalized as the chosen one, there were some other actresses who had auditioned and or were in consideration for the role, including Selma Blair, Katie Holmes, and even Charisma Carpenter, who would end up securing a role as Cordelia Chase. Funnily enough, Sarah Michelle Gellar auditioned for the role of Cordelia Chase, but ended up with Buffy Summers. Natasha Lyonne was reportedly offered the role of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but didn't want to commit to a series in the long run. Number 2. Seth Green, the common denominator. Seth Green, who plays Oz in the Buffy the Vampire Slayer television series, makes an uncredited appearance in the 1992 film in which he had yet to trade his fangs for canines. While this is more of a double cast than a recast, considering he plays a completely different character in the TV series, it's still a cute little tidbit that helps connect the feature film with the television series, with Seth Green being the only cast common denominator for both universes. And there you have it, folks. Isn't it crazy to think how different Buffy the Vampire Slayer could have been had it not been for recasts? There's definitely an art to this process, and the more shows I investigate when it comes to recasts, the more I learn about the casting process and how so many factors go into making a show as perfect as it can be. Make sure to give this video a like if you enjoyed it, hit that subscribe button so you're up to date on more behind the scenes trivia and original media analysis videos, and leave a comment down below noting who you would recast if you were a casting director on the show in 1997. Heck, take it up a notch and let me know who you would cast if they were to reboot the show for a contemporary audience, and why you think they'd be a perfect fit for the character of your choice. Chat with y'all later. Bye!